MOvember 2020, day 27. Just want to do a short video out of Facing Love Addiction by Pia Mellody. One of the things I really remember reading in this book that stayed with me was how Pia Mellody would talk about when you are arguing facts, assigning blame and keeping score, you're really out of your integrity and you're back into that either adapted or wounded self. So in a relationship, there's this guide for guidelines for being in a healthy relationship. She speaks into those three areas of what we can do in regards to those three problems. Under stress, we regress. What we regress back to is arguing facts. Once we start arguing facts, I'm going to start assigning blame. And then once I start assigning blame, I'm going to keep a scorecard. And that way I can really back up my facts, right? So this is out of Facing Love Addiction, Pia Mellody, Guidelines for Being in a Relationship. Here are some guidelines Pat and I have developed for our own relationship that we have found very helpful, especially when we're discussing something or sharing our intellectual and emotional reality with each other. So 1, don't assign blame when you're in conflict. When you confront your partner about something, don't make your partner wrong. Just make statements about what happened and what feelings you're having about it. I find that this takes a lot of discipline. Make sure the statement about what you perceived is happening does not include any hidden or open message about the other person being less than. For example, it implies the person is less than to say, when you are acting like a nincompoop in the garage. An appropriate statement might be yesterday when you walked into the garage and raised your voice to a high volume and said, and you describe what happened without labeling the person as a nincompoop. It sounds obvious, but whenever we're in that sort of blaming the other person in an argument, the other person is going to be triggered naturally to defensiveness. If we can have language that doesn't let them get caught up on that and just stay with the facts of what triggered us, we're much more likely to be heard. The next one is 2, don't keep score with your partner. When your partner is confronting you about your behavior, avoid bringing up how the partner did the same thing several times last week. What your partner did last week is not relevant to the conversation this week. The two of you are discussing what you've done this week. Staying with the moment, listening to what's going on. If someone's mentioning something to you, if we can, stay with it and see what could be in it for us. At the very least, they're telling us about something about them that is really important for us to hear about them. And if we can just not go to keeping score, we're going to have more of a chance of being heard and more of a chance of connecting. And 3 is don't argue perceptions or facts. Understand that each person has their own perceptions, and your job is to identify your own perception and listen to your partner's perceptions. We can probably be most respectful of our partner simply by hearing who that person is without judgment or trying to make our partner change his or her reality. For example, let's say that you and your best friend Elizabeth are looking at a turtle and you say, wow, what a nice color green. And Elizabeth responds, no, it's more of a blue than green. Once you are aware that the turtle looks blue to Elizabeth, don't try to argue her into seeing that it's green. Letting Elizabeth have her own reality makes her feel your love. You keep your perception of the green turtle and let it go. At first this may seem like dishonesty, but as I began to do this, I was amazed at how many times I later saw the blueness or realized that there are different ways of perceiving almost any situation. This has made me feel much more comfortable with people who see things differently from the way that I see them. And here's a couple of extra ones in this book about guidelines. 4, don't threaten abandonment in the face of conflict. Threatening abandonment is something people often use to alarm their partners when they realize they're not winning. If you find yourself slipping into an argument and the partner is winning, try to avoid saying something like, I'm going out and I don't know when I'm coming back. Or maybe we shouldn't even be in a relationship together. You may negotiate space, however, if you have a sense the discussion is escalating to an unbearable intensity. To do this without threatening abandonment, indicate when you will return by saying something like, I need a timeout and I'll be back to discuss this within 2 hours. Then keep your word and show up again in 2 hours. In this day and age too, if you're going to say, I'll contact you in 15 minutes, text them, keep your word, very important. 5, communicate in 4 sentences or less. Here is a very helpful guideline I learned from Janet. Before making requests, describing events, or asking for support, think about what you're going to say and try to say it in 4 sentences and with one breath. In addition, in your 4 sentences, avoid these common pitfalls. Try to avoid complaining. Try to avoid blaming, which is making one person right and the other person wrong. Complaining and blaming both make it hard for your partner to pay attention to what you're saying, even if it's reasonable. Try to eliminate explaining or justifying why you are doing what you are doing. Sometimes one person challenges the other and demands an explanation for that person's behavior or choices. Responding to such a challenge with justifications and explanations is not necessary. Adults do not need to explain themselves to other adults. When you start explaining yourself, the listener often stops paying attention, realizing that a lecture or a cover-up is in the making. No one likes to be lectured, and love avoidants are often hypersensitive to this. For example, before recovery, Janine used to spend 10 minutes asking her roommate Betty to get a loaf of bread at the grocery store before she came home. Janine would talk about how poorly she slept and how her head ached and as justification for not going to the store herself. Betty often didn't quite understand what Janine was asking for and didn't stop for bread, causing Janine disappointment and often argument. Now Janine says, "Betty, would you get some bread on your way home?" Betty replies, "Okay." And that's all I need to say about it. Of course, if circumstances have changed or you need to change plans that involve the other person, a brief explanation is courteous. Don't worry about whether your partner uses these guidelines. These guidelines are for you to follow. Whether your partner is following them or not is none of your business. If you follow them, the changes you will experience will bring you closer to being functional. If your children say to you, "Mom, Dad is saying this about you," what's your side of the story? And you can give them some information without making him wrong. You say, "This is my perception of it." You avoid making him wrong just by explaining your perception of the matter that they have asked you about. And you resist going into any other matter that are not your children's concern. Sorry about that. Stick to the subject and keep it brief. If the other party assigns blame and calls you wrong, focus on setting a healthy internal boundary and respond with good manners and with pleasantness. Assume an attitude of observation, saying to yourself calmly, "Oh, look, my partner is assigning blame. My partner is experiencing that first core symptom, making me wrong for him or her right. Isn't that interesting?" You just notice the other person doing it without mentioning your observation. When your partner finishes, you just nod your head, evidencing the fact that you've heard what they've said, and go on with what you're doing. Besides the fact that it is a healthy way to relate, the recovery reason for exercising good manners is to avoid giving your partner ammunition with which to become upset with you. So, just a few tips. This is a good old school book, Pia Mellody's Facing Love Addiction. There's some wonderful books on this subject, but I don't think many explain it as well as this. Again, love addiction is generally a disordered relational way of being in an intensity intimacy disorder, and is largely triggered as a result of abandonment, and they have an awful phenomenal habit of finding love avoidance who were enmeshed in their childhood. That's a whole other video. I won't do that for this MOvember campaign, but I'll certainly repost it just as a matter of course, just as a mental health resource. This is MOvember Day 27. Be gentle with your heart. I look forward to making another video tomorrow, and thank you for all you guys that are donating to the campaign out there. Bye.